The first thing I saw wasn't the marble foyer I paid for, nor was it the sunlight streaming across the expensive floors. It was a woman on her knees. She was scrubbing the floor so hard it looked like her bones were about to snap. Before I tell you what happened next, let me tell you my name, because clearly there is nothing wrong with this story being told by the one who fixed it. I am Eleanor Hayes. That mansion was mine before I gifted it to my daughter 15 years ago. But the woman scrubbing the floor did not look like anyone who had received a gift from me. Her arms trembled with every stroke of the rag. Her head was bowed low. Her spine poked through her shirt wet with sweat. Her hair was matted and dull. She looked exhausted. It was as if no one in that mansion cared if she looked human or not. The gray bucket beside her was full of water the color of old sadness. I stepped inside completely and let the heavy door click shut behind me. The security system chimed its cheerful little song. It is one of those details that rich people notice, but abusers ignore. No one looked up. Not Michael, who was sprawled across my white sectional sofa with the confidence of a man who never earned a dollar of his own. Not his mother, Linda, reclining like she owned the very air she breathed. And not the woman on the floor. Not at first. Move that bucket, Linda snapped, flicking her wrist as if she were shooing away a fly. You are dripping too close to my shoes. The woman flinched. She grabbed the bucket and scooted it an inch, just an inch, as if she knew even that small movement could cost her something. And that was the moment she finally looked up at me. Her eyes. God help me. Those eyes were empty, not tired, not stressed, empty, as if someone had reached inside her and scooped out everything that made her a person. I felt my breath catch in my throat because those eyes belonged to my daughter, to Emily. She did not speak. She did not cry out. She did not run to me or smile or break down. She stared at me like she was trying to remember me from somewhere far away, like I was a name she knew but had forgotten. Like I was a face she did not have permission to recognize. My own child did not know me. And the worst part was that Michael and Linda did not even bother to turn their heads. Michael snapped his fingers. It was a sharp, dismissive sound. Emily flinched so hard the dirty water sloshed out of the bucket. If you are with me. If this moment touches that place in you that remembers what it feels like to see your child diminished, drop a little heart in the comments so I know I am not standing in this memory alone. I forced myself to move forward my heels, clicking against the floor. Only then did Linda look my way. Can we help you? She asked without interest. She looked at me like I was a delivery driver who had wandered into the wrong house. Emily kept watching me. Her breath was shallow. Her shoulders were shaking. I saw her mouth open slightly as if a name might come out, but she snapped it shut again, too scared, too conditioned, too broken. 15 years of hard work overseas. And this is what I came back to. Not luxury, not pride, not the life I hoped my daughter would live, but a stranger scrubbing the floor she already owned. And the people sitting above her thought I was going to walk in calmly. They thought I was going to leave calmly. They thought the woman at their feet belonged to them. My fingers curled around my phone in my pocket, not shaking, not trembling, just calm and filled with purpose. I stepped toward the tall window where the signal was strongest. I turned just enough so everyone could hear me, and I dialed the only number I needed in that moment. When the line opened, I did not breathe before speaking. I did not have to. My voice cut clean through the room. Open the contingency file. Emily stared at me the way people stare when they wake up in someone else's house. Her eyes moved slowly over my face, searching for a name to attach to the features in front of her. I saw her lungs expand. Her gaze went from my silver hair down to my mouth, then back to my eyes. It was like she was flipping through a hard book in her mind that she had not opened in years. For a second, something flickered there, recognition trying to claw its way up through the exhaustion, but it fell back before it could reach the surface. I ended the call and slipped my phone into my purse, keeping my eyes on her. The The last words I spoke into that line still hung in the air between us like a silent threat that no one understood but me. I leaned my purse against the wall and walked toward her slowly and carefully, like I was approaching a wounded animal that might bolt or break if I spooked it. The rag was still in her hands, dripping dirty water onto the marble around her knees. I stopped right in front of her and lowered myself down, protesting against my old bones, but I did not let it show on my face. "Emily," I said softly. Her name felt strange in my mouth, like something I had been repeating to myself in hotel rooms and airports and office corridors abroad, then suddenly hearing it in the wrong place. Her whole body flinched, not from surprise at my voice, but with a sharp instinctive fear, the way a child reacts when they learn certain sounds are followed by pain. Her grip tightened on the rag. Her head dropped chin to chest. She would not look me in the eye. Behind us, Linda let out a scoffing sound, a noise of dismissal. "She gets tired," Linda said, words floating over to us like air freshener over a trash bag. "She likes to stay busy. She does not mind." That laugh left a bitter taste under my tongue. I stayed focused on Emily. Up close, the details hit me harder. The skin around her mouth was cracked and dry. Her cuticles were torn and raw. Fine lines had spread across her forehead, the kind that come from crying in the dark with no one there to see it. A strand of hair broke free from her messy bun and stuck to the side of her face, wet with sweat. I reached out slowly, offering my hand, not touching her, just putting it in the air between us. "Look at me, baby," I whispered. The word baby slipped out before I could stop it. 15 years is a long time to be away, but it is not long enough to retrain a mother's tongue. Her shoulders stiffened. Her eyes lifted just enough to brush my face, as if she had been taught that direct eye contact was some kind of rebellion. Up close, I saw it. The dark yellow shadow on the edge of her jaw, the faint darkness along her collarbone where the neckline of her shirt dipped. I let my gaze travel down, careful not to react, down to her arm right where her sleeve ended. A bruise bloomed under her yellow skin, half-hidden, oval, and ugly. There were older marks, too fading at the edges, but still there, hanging like a memory someone tried and failed to erase. My heart beat a slow, controlled rhythm, not the kind that sends a woman weeping, but the kind that sharpens every thought. "Is she done cleaning yet?" Michael called from the sofa, his tone smooth. "You are making the floor too wet." He spoke about her like she was a tool. He spoke about her as if she did not have ears of her own. Emily did not answer. She put the rag back in the bucket, her fingers shaking enough for me to see. The water rippled. Linda made a little noise of annoyance in the background but did not move her feet. I moved a little closer to my daughter, close enough to smell the mix of cheap detergent and stale sweat clinging to her clothes. "Emily." I tried again, my voice even lower. "It is me." Her eyes snapped up then. A light passed through them. Pain, shame, something trapped. Her breath hitched. The muscles in her throat worked around words that would not come. I could see it. The war happening inside her between the instinct to recognize me and the fear of what that recognition might cost. If you are still listening to me and you have seen someone you love swallow their own truth just to survive, leave a little heart in the comments so I know I am not speaking into the dark alone. Do not distract her. Linda said, stretching her legs out a little, her feet almost touching the wet spot on the floor. She stops when people hover over her like that. The way she said people carried the kind of chill that did not need volume. Michael clicked his tongue. Once, impatience flaring. "Did you hear my mother?" he said. "Just finish up and put the bucket back where it belongs." His mother. The word sat in my chest like a stone. I did not argue that point, not yet. Instead, I watched Emily's hand move. She put the rag down on the marble in a quick, practiced motion, as if she had done it 1,000 times in hallways and rooms where someone might be watching. My gaze met hers for a heartbeat. This time she held it. Barely. There was no welcome there, just fear and something close to an apology. Her lips parted. When she spoke, her voice cracked thin and brittle, like it had been used for saying sorry more than anything else. "Please," she whispered the word breaking on her tongue. "Do not get me in trouble." I stood up from Emily's side and turned fully toward the sofa, toward the two people who had made themselves comfortable in a life they did not build. Michael lounged there like a man on a throne, one hand resting on the back of the sofa, the other still holding the remote. His shoulders expanded, his feet apart, taking up space that did not belong to him. Linda sat with her legs crossed, her expensive blouse crisp against her back. Her chin lifted slightly as if the air in that room answered to her. They looked like they were posing for a photo that would never be developed, frozen in a confidence that came from never being told no in a language they respected. I had seen them like this before, but not this close. In the early years, when Emily still sent the occasional photo abroad, they were always somewhere in the background, at the edge of birthday parties, at the end of a sofa, near a grill in someone's backyard. Linda, with that same tilt to her head. Michael, with that same slouch. I used to pinch and zoom on my phone screen, studying them from hotel floors in London, from rented apartments in Manchester, telling myself I would get to know them properly when the work slowed down. Now here I was staring at the full picture, and they behaved as if I were a stranger walking through a showroom. Neither of them moved as I approached. They did not stand to greet me. They did not say my name. They did not even show the polite pretense of welcoming a guest. Michael finally muted the television, not because I had arrived, but because he wanted silence without commercials. "Are you done staring?" I asked him, my eyes drilling into him like he was another line item on a shipping manifest. His voice carried a bored edge, as if this moment were an interruption in a day he thought he controlled. Linda shifted slightly, smoothing her blouse, adjusting the hem with small, precise fingers. Her rings caught the light, stones sparkling. I recognized the pattern on one of her bracelets. It belonged to a set Emily owned. I saw it once in a catalog years ago, something my daughter had called too fancy for herself, and laughed. Seeing it on Linda made something heavy in my stomach tighten. I let my gaze move between them, then past them, taking in the space. The shelves held very little clutter. A pair of shoes I did not recognize sat neatly under the coffee table. A loose blazer was draped over the back of a chair in the corner. These were the markings of the people who lived here, not the visitors. Meanwhile, my daughter's presence was marked only by the bucket by the door and the wet streaks on the floor. She stayed to the left now, head bowed, shoulders curved in toward her body like a spine that did not work. When I looked at her again, I saw more than tiredness. Her shoulders slumped forward in a way they never used to, as if gravity had been instructed to press harder on her alone. Her arms hung close to her sides, taking up as little space as possible. The skin under her eyes carried the dark gray tint of someone who had been sleeping in naps instead of full nights. None of that happened overnight. It took time and neglect to carve a person down to that. "Do you need something?" Linda asked me finally, her tone polite but with ice underneath. "We do not do handouts. You can talk to Michael if you are here about the house." She spoke of the house as if it were a separate entity. They managed not a gift I had placed directly into my daughter's hands. My lips pressed together for a second. I felt the weight of every year I spent signing foreign contracts while assuming my only child was safe inside the walls I had paid for. "I know my way around this property," I said, my voice low. I signed the papers. Michael exhaled a short breath that was not quite a laugh. 15 years ago, he replied, "Things change. People grow up. People move on." He nodded in Emily's direction without looking at her. "She gave us the house. You stayed away too long." The words fell without apology. No one rushed to soften them. Emily's fingers tightened on the handle of the bucket, her lips parting. She did not contradict him. She did not raise her head. Her silence sat between us, heavy and trained. He wanted me to hear the accusation in what he said. that my absence was a permission slip, that my distance made his theft legitimate. I let the first wave of guilt wash through me and recede without showing on my face. I had my own reckoning with the years I had chosen work over visits and missed birthdays, but I refused to let my mistakes become his justification. I took one more slow look at my daughter, at the way her body was angled halfway toward him, even when he was not addressing her like a dog, listening for the next command. Then I brought my eyes back to Michael and Linda. My voice, when it came, was soft enough that they had to lean in slightly to catch the words. "Did she give it?" I asked, letting every syllable sit in the air. Or was it taken? Michael's mouth curved with a slow, humorless smile when I asked my question. He did not answer me immediately. Men like him enjoy the pause. They like the way silence makes their next move feel bigger. He leaned forward, placed the remote carefully on the glass table, and stood up from the chair with the ease of someone who had never tightened a single screw in this house. "You want to talk about giving and taking," he said. "Fine." He adjusted his shirt, fixing the front as if he were about to make a presentation instead of defending a robbery. Then he walked past me, not around, but close enough that his shoulder brushed mine on purpose. It was a small contact, but it carried a message. "I am not afraid of you." He crossed the room to the built-in cabinet along the far wall, the same one I used to keep family photo albums and table linens in. Now, when he opened the door, there were no albums, just a stack of folders and a metal lockbox sitting where memories used to live. He reached in, pulled out the box, and placed it on top of the cabinet. The sound of the metal hitting the wood rang sharply in the room. Emily flinched at the noise, her fingers tightening again on the rag. Linda watched with curiosity, as if she had seen this show before. Michael pulled a key from his pocket and unlocked the box. The click of the tumblers falling into place sounded louder than it should have. He lifted the lid and flipped through papers, practicing with his fingers until he found what he wanted. When he turned back to me, he was holding a manila folder, the edges worn from being handled too often. "You do not have to take my word for it," he said, his tone carrying a smug smoothness. "We like to do things right here." He walked back slow and controlled and dropped the folder on the table between us. The folder fell open enough for a stack of documents to peek out white against the orange. "Go ahead." He added, gesturing with a little flick of his hand, "You like signing things. You will appreciate the paperwork." I did not reach for it immediately. I looked at him instead. He stood in that way he did a little too straight legs apart, chest puffed out. This was a performance for him, a moment he had rehearsed in his mind the day he could hold his supposed proof in front of the woman who funded the life he now claimed. Finally, I stepped forward and opened the folder. The top page was a copy of the deed. My eyes went to the address. First, the address I knew by heart, then down to the line where the signatures lived. Michael shifted just a fraction, as if he wanted to peer over my shoulder, but thought better of it. I let my gaze zoom in on Emily's name. The letters were familiar, but the way they sat on the line was wrong. Her handwriting used to flow light and loopy, opening up the vowels, the strokes even. The signature on that page was broken. The first letter started strong, then dipped the tail, trailing lower than it should. The next letters bunched together as if they were huddling against each other, trying not to fall off the edge of the document. There was a tremor in the ink itself, small stops and starts where the pen had hesitated. That was not the writing of a woman sitting comfortably at a kitchen table, making a decision with a clear head. That was the mark of someone whose hand had been guided by fear. Behind me, Linda shifted again, the rustle of her clothes filling the silence. "See?" she said lightly. "Everything is in order. If you are listening to this and you have seen a piece of paper, tell the truth. Someone's mouth refuses to speak. Just leave a little heart in the comments, so I know you understand what I saw on that page." I did not answer Linda. I kept studying the signature, letting the silence do the work. The notary stamp was near the bottom, nice and official, the kind of seal that makes people stop asking questions. I checked the date. It was a day I remembered for something totally different. an email from Emily that never arrived, a call that I missed, and then she never returned. At the time, she had told me she was busy, that the marriage and the business and life were pulling her in different directions. Now, standing in that room, I realized what was actually happening. While I soothed my disappointment with excuses, she signed everything over. Michael said, suddenly breaking my thoughts, his voice settling into that comfortable arrogance again. And she signed it to me. That is how it works. You sent her the check. She is the one who cashed it. That is family. I lifted my head slowly and looked at him. On the surface, I kept my face calm. Features arranged in the same polite interest I wore in boardrooms when men tried to talk over me with half the information. But inside, something was coiling tight. My eyes narrowed, focusing not just on him, but on the pattern behind his words, the way he positioned himself as the natural next step, the way he turned my absence into his permission slip. Emily was in my peripheral vision, pressed against the side of the room like part of the wall. Her shoulders hiked up toward her ears, her body folding inward. She did not move, she did not speak, and she did not reach for the documents with her own name on them. My phone vibrated in my pocket, the sound buzzing through the heavy air. I did not look away from Michael as I reached in and pulled it out, glancing at the screen. A short message from my lawyer sat there, clear and simple. I am 10 minutes away. Do not leave. I closed the folder and left it on the table like something that might dirty my hands if I touched it any longer. My phone, still warm from the message, sat in my palm. 10 minutes. That was all I needed to buy. 10 minutes of truth before other people started writing reports about my child's life. I slipped the phone back into my purse and turned my back on Michael, turning instead toward Emily. She had not moved from her spot near the wall. Her eyes were on the floor, on the dark streak left by the mop, as if staring at it hard enough could make it disappear. "Come here," I said softly. I did not wait for permission. I walked over and touched her arm gently, the way you touch glass that looks like it might shatter if you push too hard. Her skin was warm under my fingers, too warm for someone who had just been working in an air-conditioned house. She flinched at the contact. A small jerk ran through her limb, but she did not pull away. I guided her toward the far side of the room, away from the chair, away from the cabinet with the lockbox. Linda made a disgusted sound under her breath, but did not bother to stand up. Michael sat back down in his seat, one eye on the television screen, which was muted, the other pretending not to watch us. In the corner, the light changed. The angle of the window put us half in shadow, half in sun, close enough to be seen if anyone wanted to look far enough away for them to pretend they were not listening. I turned, so my back was to the rest of the room, putting my body between Emily and the eyes on the sofa. "You are burning up," I murmured, keeping my voice low. "How long have you been sick?" Her lips pressed together. For a moment, I thought she would not answer. Then her shoulders slumped a tiny surrender. "It was bad last year," she whispered. The words cracked from her throat, dry and scared. "Fever, cough, I could not get up for a long time." Her gaze darted past me, checking the room, then fell back to the floor between us. That was when he took it. Took what I asked, even though my mind was already moving ahead of her words, layering the documents I had seen with the timeline she was describing. The deed. Her teeth clicked nervously against her lip. He told me he would keep them safe. I was too weak to argue. I was on the floor and he stood over me with a pen. He told me if anything happened to him, I would be the one left with nothing unless we changed things. I did not want to sign. She broke off the movement, sharp and painful. He told me I was ungrateful, that he and his mother were the ones taking care of me every day, that it was only fair they had security. I could not breathe. Right? I just wanted him to stop yelling. If you are listening to me and you have seen your child agree to something out of fear instead of choice, drop a little heart in the comments so I know I am not the only one whose stomach has learned the weight of that kind of guilt. "So you signed," I said quietly. It was not a question. Her eyes filled up, but no tears fell. I did not mean to. she said. My hand was shaking. I told him we should wait, that you should be here for anything important. He told me you were living your new life, and I had to stop acting like a little girl waiting for Mommy to fix everything. Each word hit me like a separate blow, but I let them land. I needed the full shape of this, not a softened version. He grabbed my arm. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He pressed the pen into my fingers. He said if I loved him, I would prove it. So I proved it. The air in the corner felt thick. My heart was breaking all over again, but the pieces were different, now sharper, clearer. What else, Emily? I asked. Tell me the rest. After that, she continued, he put the papers in that box. He told me if I ever tried to go behind his back about the house, he would put me on the street by morning. He said my name did not matter anymore. She gave a humorless smile that died as soon as it left her mouth. He knows I have nowhere to go. He told me. She cut herself off abruptly, catching the rest of the sentence, as if something inside had warned her not to open that door just yet. He told me if I pushed him, I would lose everything. The house, my home, even the clothes on my back. Her eyes darted back toward the rest of the room. Then he turned me back into a maid. He told me a wife who does not obey does not deserve a mansion. Her fingernails dug into her palms. I uncurled them slowly, and the walls, I asked, my voice steady, "Why are you so tired?" A dark flush of shame crept up her neck. He does not like seeing the walls dirty, she whispered. If he wakes up and the walls do not shine, he does not speak to me for days, or he slams doors, walks heavy. Sometimes he dumps things in the bathroom for me to clean up. It is easier if I just scrub them spotless. I barely sleep. I just keep moving. Her voice, until then fairly strong, ran out of breath. He slammed the walls repeatedly. The three truths sank between us. He took the documents when she was too sick to fight. He dared her to kick him out, and he turned her nights into endless, terrified labor to keep his temper quiet. The sickness grew in me like a storm, but I refused to die in it. Sadness would not save her. Strategy would. On that edge, something in me shifted. The shame that had sat heavy in my chest since I walked through the door lifted, making room for something colder, clearer. I was not just a mother coming home too late. I was a woman who knew how to turn signatures and threats into evidence. I lifted my hand and touched her arm softly, not flinching at the heat of her skin. "You're not crazy," I told her softly, "and you are not weak. You were ambushed." Her eyes filled again, but she stayed quiet as if crying might earn her another punishment. From behind me, across the rug of that living room, I heard the sound of shoes approaching. Not the slow sound of someone passing by, the stride of a man who had decided he had let his wife talk too long. The sound of his shoes had just crossed the last of the floor before his hand was on her shoulder. Michael did not ask, did not clear his throat, did not apologize. He just reached between us and grabbed Emily's hand with a sharp squeeze that made her gasp. The damp rag fell against the bucket, sending a spray of dirty water onto her shins. "Wait a minute," he said, not even looking at me. "You are behind." His tone was smooth, the kind of smooth that comes from practice. He turned her shoulder, pulling her back toward his chest like a weapon returning to its holster. Emily's hands came up automatically. Muscles conditioned, protecting herself before he even struck. Her eyes darted between his face and mine, panic fluttering at the corners of her mouth. She opened her lips as if to explain, then closed them again when she saw his jaw tighten. She started. Talking, he cut her off. "You were just talking when there is still work to be done." He turned his eyes to me, then finally acknowledging that I existed. Up close, I could see the fine line of irritation in his brow, the tiny pulse of a vein in his temple. No gossiping, no complaining. "Ladies," he added. The word pressed through gritted teeth. I did not realize we were hosting a conference here. Linda let out a little laugh from the chair, the kind that does not reach the eyes. She tucked her feet under her, as if settling in for a show. I did not back down. I did not apologize. I shifted my body just enough to put myself between him and Emily, my hand resting lightly at my side, not touching her, but close enough so she could feel I had not moved. "She's been on her feet since before I walked in," I said calmly. "She can sit for a moment." "She does not move from this house," Michael shot back. The easy charm he probably used on neighbors and church members slipped off his face like a mask placed on the table. What sat underneath was something harder, smaller. "You left your keys and your money here years ago and went to chase your dreams abroad. That does not give you the right to waltz back in and interrupt how things are done." His voice rose a little on the last few words, but not enough to be called yelling. That is how he liked to do his damage, just under the line of what other people might call abuse if they heard it without context. I saw Emily's shoulders hunching closer. I saw her eyes touch the floor again. The jaw beneath the mask ground against his teeth. Michael Linda said very softly, "Do not worry, she is just adjusting." The word adjusting hung in the air like a bad smell. He scoffed, never taking his eyes off me. "I am calm," he said. "I am just setting a boundary." He took a step closer. The smell of his cologne hit me heavy and acidic, trying to cover the scent of stale sweat that floated around all the hard surfaces of the room. "This is my house," he said softly, like explaining something to a stubborn child. "My land, my decisions. You are a guest here, Eudora. Do not confuse that." My name in his mouth felt like an insult. Behind me, I could feel Emily shrinking back as if she could become small enough to fall into the corner behind the drapes. I met his gaze and held it. Years of sitting across from men in suits who thought my accent and my gender meant they could talk to me cheaper had given me practice. This was a different battlefield, but the opponent was familiar. I let my face go smooth. I did not cross my arms. I did not purse my lips. Only my eyes changed, narrowing the way they did when I read the fine print in a contract. "You are right about one thing," I told him. I left. I went where I had to go to build what I needed to build. I stayed away too long. That is on me. I let those words settle because they were true, and the truth has its own weight. Then I leaned in just enough to make him decide whether to step back or stand there and let my presence be in his face. He chose the ground, his jaw tightening another notch. "But you are wrong about this floor." I added, my voice dropping low so only the three of us in that corridor could hear it. "You are living inside a decision that was never yours." His nostrils flared. "She gave it all." He repeated it like a man reciting his favorite scripture. "She signed it to me. That makes it mine." End of story. He liked that line. He had probably used it in this room before. I studied him for a long breath, taking in the small bead of sweat at his hairline, the vein jumping near his collar, the way his hand flexed, twice wanting to grab something. I thought about the signature on that deed, the dips, the tremor in the ink, the fever Emily had described, the way her hand had shaken. My heartbeat, which had been a heavy rhythm when I started walking across this room, settled into something steady, almost strangely calm. "No," I said, finally, not end of story. The air stretched tight between us. Linda shifted again on the sofa, her clothes rustling. Somewhere deeper in the house, a pipe groaned softly as water moved through it. Outside, a car drove past tires, crunching softly on the pavement. I watched the moment a flicker of uncertainty tried to grow in the back of Michael's neck. He pushed it down quickly. "You need to get out," he said, his tone dropping an octave. "Today. You are not going to come in here turning my wife against me, stirring up old things. This is my house. I will not say it again." I let the words hang there, not afraid of the answer. Then I straightened my back, lifted my chin, and looked him dead in the eye. "Not for long," I said. The words came out level, no yelling, no fear, just the calm of a woman who had already moved the pieces. A beat later, from the direction of the front door, a loud, heavy knock echoed through the house. The knock sounded again, harder this time, a rhythm that carried through the walls and into the silence Michael had tried to own. He snapped his head toward the door, a frown creasing his forehead. Patrice sat up straighter on the sofa, irritation tightening her mouth. Emily almost flinched, but I felt her breathe behind me. "Who is that?" Linda muttered. "We were not expecting anyone." Michael did not wait to show he did not like surprises. Then he turned on his heel and walked toward the foyer. I stayed where I was listening. The front door opened with a sharp click. I heard a man's voice, deep and firm. "Morning. DeKalb County Sheriff's Office. We are looking for Michael Wells and Linda Wells." He did not yell. He did not sound angry. That made it more dangerous. Men with badges rarely come without a purpose. I moved closer to the archway that leads to the foyer, pausing just before walking fully into view. From there, I could see enough. 2 deputies stood on the front step. Uniforms, crisp boots, clean badges catching the sun outside. One held a stack of sealed envelopes in his left hand, the white edges pressing against his fingers. The other had a small notepad stuck in his pocket, a pen clipped next to it. Their presence changed the air in the house. It felt heavier and cleaner at the same time. Michael braced one hand on the door frame, blocking half the opening with his body. "That is me," he said. "This is my mother. What is this about?" He nodded his head back toward Linda, who had gotten up from the sofa and now hovered a few steps behind him. Her robe gaped open. She put a hand on his arm, trying to make it look casual. "We have not done anything," she added quickly. "Must be a mistake." The closest deputy did not take a step back. He simply looked at her, then back to Michael. "We will explain," he said, "but we need to come in. This concerns your residence." The word residence seemed to prick Michael's pride. His arm flexed. "You can explain right here," he replied. "My wife does not like strangers tramping through her house." I stepped forward then into the frame of the archway. "Let them in," I said calmly. "It is my house they are standing in front of, and I would like to hear what they came to say." The deputy's eyes locked onto me, assessing. He took in the bucket by the wall, the mop, the bruised shadow of Emily pressed near the corner, Linda's silk robe. He did not let surprise show, but I could see he was gathering details, cataloging them in silence. If you are listening to me now and you have seen authority walk into a room where people thought they would never be challenged, leave us a little heart below. So I know you understand that strange mix of fear and relief. Michael shot me a look over his shoulder, hot and sharp, but he stepped aside anyway. Pride changes when uniforms get involved. The deputies walked inside. The larger one closed the door slowly behind him, then turned so he could face us all at once. "Mr. Wells, Mrs. Wells," he nodded first to Michael, then to Linda. "We are here to serve you with a court order issued this afternoon by the city court." Linda's hand tightened on Michael's arm. "I told you we have not done anything," she said, voice rising. "We pay our taxes. We mind our business." "Ma'am," the deputy replied, "you will have a chance to respond. Right now, our job is to present this and make you aware of what it means." He unsealed the top envelope, being careful not to rip the paper, and pulled out a document. He did not hand it over yet. He read from it first. "This order places a temporary freeze on all property-related actions regarding this residence." He recited, eyes moving slowly across the page. "It also initiates an investigation into suspected coercion, intimidation, and possible forced servitude occurring within these walls." The words fell into the room one by one, like heavy stones into a quiet pond. Emily's head snapped up. I saw her eyes go wide, confused, and fighting for space. Linda's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again like a fish, gasping in air. Forced servitude, she repeated, scandal and fear blended together. "That is ridiculous. It is family." The deputy glanced toward Emily, just for a moment, then back to the page. "We are not here to debate the details." He said, "We are here to ensure nothing changes about the ownership or occupancy until the investigation is complete. No selling, no transferring, no evicting." At that moment, Michael's eyes darted toward me. Something ugly moved across his face, a shadow passing behind his gaze. The second deputy stepped forward and extended the document. "You are named in the order," he said. "We are required to read the key parts to you and confirm receipt." Michael snatched the paper, scanning too fast to absorb much. His nostrils flared. Linda peered at his arm, trying to read her teeth, digging into her bottom lip. "Who started this?" he demanded. "Who told you something was wrong here?" Neither deputy answered him. They did not need to. The silence said enough. I stood in the back hands folded in front of me, heart steady. This was just the first blow, but it was a deep one. The foundation they had been standing on for years had just been marked, measured, and tagged for inspection. Michael finally lifted his head from the paper and turned fully toward me. The calm he had worn like a jacket earlier was gone. His eyes were hot now. Narrow and dark, his lips pressed into a hard line. He looked at me like he could climb out of his situation with anger. "You think this changes anything?" he hissed. He spat the words like they burned. Before I could answer, the sound of another car door closing floated in from outside. A moment later, the doorbell rang, just once, quick and short. The deputies exchanged a quick glance. One of them nodded toward the driveway. "Expecting someone else, ma'am?" he asked me. "Yes," I said. "My lawyer." I did not take my eyes off Michael as I answered him. He scoffed under his breath, a harsh, dismissive sound. "You really think some paper is going to undo what is already done," he said. "You are late, Eudora. We live here. That is the reality." Linda straightened her robe again like it was armor pulling the sash tighter. "And we have taken care of Emily all these years," she added, her voice pitching up to something trying to sound wounded. "This is an attack on our family." The deputy opened the door. My lawyer walked in with the kind of calm you only get from decades of walking into rooms where people do not want to see you, gray at his temples now. In his hand, his leather briefcase, soft leather that did not shout but commanded attention all the same. He took in the scene, the deputies, Michael's rigid stance, Linda's tightened jaw, Emily in the corner, me near the archway, and gave a small nod in my direction. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, "sorry for the delay." The judge wanted to see every page before signing. He walked past Michael without brushing against him and headed straight to the coffee table. Michael's manila folder lay there, edges splayed. My lawyer placed his briefcase next to it, snapped it open, and pulled out a thicker, older file. The contingency file. The cardboard edges were worn, the tab marked with my last name in ink that had faded slightly over time. Seeing it again after all those years felt like watching a ghost of myself from long ago walk into the room. "What is this supposed to be?" Michael asked, trying to sound unimpressed. "Another box of accusations." My lawyer did not rise to the bait. He opened the file with careful fingers and spread the contents on the table surface. The room seemed to hold its breath. On top lay the original deed, the one I had signed before I ever boarded a plane out of Georgia, when Emily's laughter still filled these rooms. Behind it, another document and another, each bearing my signature. Her signature dates marching in order, in. "This," my lawyer said evenly, "is the record of how this house was acquired. And this," he tapped the second page, "is the agreement you and I put in place before you relocated Mrs. Hayes." He glanced my way, then returned his eyes to the deputies. At her instruction, we included specific protections. One of the deputies leaned closer, resting his hands lightly on his belt as he looked down at the table. The other pulled out his notepad pen, clicking open and ready. Linda leaned in, peering at the clauses as if they might rearrange themselves into something more favorable if she stared hard enough. "I do not see how that matters now," she said. "The house is in Michael's name. We have his paper." My lawyer reached for the deed Michael had pulled from his own pocket earlier and laid it next to ours. Two versions of the same history side by side. "What matters," he said, "is which set of documents carries legal weight. This property was purchased solely by Mrs. Hayes." It was gifted to her daughter under very specific conditions, and in this contingency agreement, he flipped another page forward, the paper soft from being turned many times. She reserved certain rights in case anything threatened her daughter's well-being or the integrity of the transfer. I remembered sitting in his office all those years back, the air cool and quiet, as we talked through worst-case scenarios I thought would never happen. He asked me, "Are you sure you want to think that far ahead?" And I said yes, because loving someone means signing for storms even when the sky looks clear. What conditions, one of the deputies asked. My lawyer pointed to a paragraph halfway down the page. The lines dense, the words precise. Here he said in plain language, it states that any transfer sharing or surrender of this property made under intimidation, coercion, manipulation, or physical or emotional abuse shall be considered void. In that event, the property reverts to its previous status pending investigation. For a moment, no one spoke. I watched the meaning of those words travel through the room. Travel through eyes. The deputy's chins dipped slightly. The one with the notepad wrote something down. Michael's lips thinned. Linda's coloring changed first. The red that had risen in her cheeks when the deputies arrived drained away, leaving the skin around her mouth a dull, waxen gray. Her eyes darted to Emily, then back to the documents. So that does not prove anything, she said, but the edge in her voice had dismantled. People write all kinds of things that do not mean anything. If you have ever watched someone realize the trap they set for someone else might just snap on them instead, you know, that silence that comes right before they start talking too fast. Leave a heart in the comments if you have seen that shift happen. My lawyer folded his hands lightly in front of him. On their own, this contingency agreement is just words on paper, he said. But in context with the sudden freezing of the property, with the questionable signature Mr. Wells produced with Mrs. Hayes's account of what she found when she returned, it becomes something more. One of the deputies nodded slowly, especially with visible signs of distress. He added, his gaze pivoting toward Emily. She shrank from the attention fingers twisting in the hem of her oversized shirt. Michael scoffed. "Okay," he stepped forward. "She is tired, that is all. You cannot come in here and throw around words like coercion, because her mommy's feelings are hurt." The deputy closest to him straightened a fraction. "Sir," he said, his tone cool. "Right now, we are not drawing conclusions. We are noting concerns. And between what we have seen, what is written here, and the conditions laid out in this agreement," he glanced back at my lawyer, who gave a single small nod. The lawyer's voice remained measured, but now there was steel underneath it. "Deputies," he said, "we have reason to suspect abuse here." A moment after my lawyer spoke, the room took on a sharper edge. The words "suspect abuse" do not just sit in the air, they sink in and change the way everyone moves. One of the deputies cleared his throat softly, then turned his full attention to Emily. He did not crowd her. He took a slow step in her direction, hands still resting on his belt, voice lowered. "Ma'am," he said, "may I speak with you for a second?" Emily froze. Her teeth snagged her lower lip, cracking the dry skin. Her eyes darted to Michael, then to Linda, then to me, as if trying to decide which set of eyes held the worse danger. "She is tired." Linda chimed in a little too fast. "She does not need all this stress. We told you there has been a misunderstanding." The deputy did not look at her. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "you do not have to lie for anyone. Show us where you really sleep." Those words, "really sleep," seemed to unlock something. Emily's shoulders slumped. She nodded just once, almost imperceptibly. "Okay," she said. Her voice was so brittle I barely heard it. She peeled her back carefully off the wall as if she feared breaking contact might change someone's mind. Then she turned and started down the hallway. Her bare feet whispered against the floor. The officers followed her, their heavy boots thudding. I walked behind them close enough to see her, far enough so she did not feel crowded. Michael paced in the background, muttering under his breath. Linda hovered near him, fingers clawing at his arm. We passed the hallway to the guest bedrooms, the one I had decorated with fluffy pillows and a collage of pictures Emily took when she was young. Her door was open. The bed inside was perfectly made untouched. There was not a wrinkle on the spread, not a pair of slippers on the floor. Not there, Emily said quietly, almost to herself. She kept going. At the end of the hall, she turned toward the part of the house that had always been used for storage. The laundry room, the small utility closet, the space under the stairs, where we used to keep Christmas decorations. My chest tightened. She stopped in front of a narrow door with a flat knob, the kind of door most people would walk past without seeing. Her hand hovered over it for a moment. I saw her swallow hard, then she forced herself to turn the knob. The door swung inward with a slow, whining creak. Even before the light from the hallway spilled inside, I smelled it. A stale, enclosed odor. The sharp scent of mildew laced with the sweet tang of old sweat and cleaning chemicals. The officers leaned in. Inside the space was barely wide enough for a person to stand up straight and stretch their arms without touching both walls. There was no window, no lamp, no soft carpet, just a thin yoga mat on the floor. Its corners were curling darker than the rest. A single thin blanket was crumpled near the foot of it, as if it had been kicked off in restless sleep. Beside the mat sat a plastic cup, clean but unmistakable in its purpose. A small shelf had been rigged from a scrap of wood and 2 brackets. On it sat a bottle of cheap lotion, a folded t-shirt, and a toothbrush in a cracked cup. There were no photos, no books, no sign that this was anything other than a place to store a body when its hands were done being used. One of the deputies clicked his tongue in silence, a sound of disgust, more than judgment. The other's face went blank in the way law enforcement faces go blank when they are locking something down under evidence. "You are sleeping in here," he asked the officer closest to the door, though he already knew the answer. Emily stood just outside the frame, her arms wrapped around herself as if trying to take up even less space than the closet allowed. She nodded. "Sometimes I get to sit in the chair," she said, eyes fixed on the mat. "If I finish everything." "Finish what?" asked the second deputy. "The floors, the laundry, the cooking, whatever they want." Her voice thinned, floating down the list. "If I am too slow," she said, "I do not deserve a soft floor. He says this is enough for someone who does not earn her keep." Michael scoffed from behind us. "It is a quiet room," he said. "She crashes in there a couple of nights when she was sick. You make it sound like a prison." The officer by the door took a slow breath, then keyed the radio clipped to his shoulder. It crackled slightly, but not so much we could not hear it. Dispatch. "This is Unit 12 on scene," he said, requesting a supervisor at this address. "Possible domestic servitude situation. We've documented injuries and sleeping arrangements inconsistent with a spouse. Copy. Static." It crackled for a moment, then a calm voice replied, "Copy Unit 12. Supervisor en route. Secure the scene." He lowered his hand from the radio, his jaw set. He met my eyes briefly. In that look, I saw what he could not promise out loud yet. Things were shifting. Lines were being drawn. Behind me, I heard Linda gasp. This was all unraveling. She scoffed, words hissing between her teeth. "She likes it down there." The supervisor arrived without fanfare, but the shift in the house was immediate. He was older than the other deputies, with lines around his eyes that said he had heard every version of "we did not do anything more," times than he could count. There was no loud voice, no fanfare, just a quiet authority that settled over the room like a new kind of weather. He listened while Unit 12 gave a quick rundown near the stairs. The injuries, the closet, the contingency file, the court order. His eyes moved from one face to the other. To me, to Emily, to Michael, to Linda, taking his time like he was arranging us on a board in his mind. Then he said 6 words that changed everything. "We are going to separate everyone." Those words hit Michael and Linda harder than the accusations. Linda scoffed, her hand flying to her chest. "Separate," she repeated. "This is our home. We have nothing to hide." Michael scoffed, but his chest puffed out again. "This is overkill," he said. "You are turning a marital disagreement into a crime scene." The supervisor did not argue. He just gave quick instructions. A deputy led Emily gently toward the kitchen area, away from the living room and the closet door that still stood open like a wound. Another motioned for me to sit near the far end of the sofa. Michael was asked to stay near the foyer. Linda scoffed and fluttered between rooms until the supervisor gestured toward a chair in the corner and said, "Ma'am, sit there, please." He started with Emily. From where I sat, I could only see her profile, the way her hands kept twisting in her lap fingers, restless. Her voice stayed low, broken into pieces. "Did anyone hit you? When did you sign? Who was there? What happened before you wrote your name?" Her answers came in stops and starts, but they came. He said if I did not, I would be on the street. He took the papers when I could not stand up much. He stood over me. He raised his voice. I just wanted it to stop. I watched the supervisor write, pause, look up, ask her to clarify a detail, then write again. He did not rush. He did not judge. He treated her words like evidence, not gossip. If you have ever been in a room and someone finally told the truth about what was happening behind closed doors, and you felt both proud and sick at the same time, leave me a little heart in the comments so I know you understand that double feeling. Then it was Linda's turn. A deputy moved closer to her chair while the supervisor walked over. Her tone came out sharp, almost shrill now. She has always been dramatic, Linda insisted. She cries over everything. If she had a bruise, it was from bumping into a table or dropping something. She gets emotional. She stressed that last word like it meant unreliable. The supervisor did not react. "Did you ever see your son put his hands on her?" he asked. There was a pause. "Not in a way that wasn't normal," she said. "Sometimes a man has to remind his wife of her duties. That is marriage." The pen in his hand did not move for half a beat. Then he continued. Then he came to me. Up close, I could see the darkness on his arm, the coffee stain on his shirt. A real man, a long day. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, "I need your statement. Start from the moment you walked in today. Only what you personally saw and heard." So I did. I told him about the first thing I saw, which was my daughter on her knees, scrubbing a floor she already owned while her husband and mother-in-law sat giving orders on my furniture. I told him how she did not recognize me at first, how he snapped his fingers to make her move faster, how her hands shook on the rag. I described the way she flinched when I said her name, the bruises on the back of her neck, the heat in her skin when I touched her arm. My handwriting remained surprisingly steady as I wrote line after line. Years of filling out forms and contracts in foreign offices had trained my hand not to shake under pressure. He listened without interrupting, just nodding, occasionally asking me to repeat a word here or there so it was clear on the recording. "You mentioned photographs earlier before they really looked at me." I answered. I grabbed my phone like I was checking messages. I took 2 pictures of her, one from the doorway one, when she moved closer to the bucket. I wanted proof of what she looked like before anyone could say I was exaggerating. I scrolled to the photos and turned the screen so he could see Emily huddled over the bucket legs, spread eyes wide, the bucket in the background, like they were watching a show. The officer's eyebrow rose just a fraction. "Can you send these to the email on this card?" he asked, handing me a small contact card from his pocket. "We will add them to the case file. I will do it right now." I told him, my fingers moving over the screen, sending the images while I noted the time and the names of the files. If you are listening to me and you have reached a point where you stopped asking and started documenting, just leave a little heart in the comments, so I know I am not the only mother who learned to turn her pain into evidence. When I finished writing, he took the clipboard, glanced at my statement, then had me sign and date the bottom. This aligns with what my deputies observed. He said quietly, "We are also going to get an official medical assessment for your daughter. Her condition is concerning." The words "condition is concerning" were too small for what I had seen in her eyes, but I understood he had to speak like a report, not like a mother. "What happens now?" I asked. I kept my voice steady. I was not asking for comfort. I needed a sequence. "Right now we lock it down," he replied. "No one shreds paper. No one moves money. No one moves her out of that house without us knowing. We are applying for an arrest warrant and additional search authority. My deputies inside and outside are finishing up the scene notes." He looked toward the front door where another deputy was moving in and out carrying clipboards, speaking briefly into his radio. "The Financial Crimes Unit is already pulling what they can on property and related accounts," he added. "They work fast when something smells wrong." I thought of Emily's voice in the corner of that room, the way she had stumbled around words like threat and street. And if she loved him, she would prove it. Something hard and cold settled deeper inside me. I was not running on rage anymore. This was a different fuel. "She is not going back into that closet tonight," I told him. It was not a plea. It was a line I needed in the record. He met my eyes. "Not if I have anything to say about it," he replied. His radio chirped a short burst of static, followed by a voice I did not recognize. He lifted it to his ear, listening. "Cap," he said. "Patch it through." A younger deputy walked out of the house a moment later, moving with that focused urgency that meant he had heard something worth carrying. He came straight to us, nodding to his supervisor before turning to me. "Ma'am," he said, leaning in slightly, "Financial Crimes found something they wanted you to hear." The younger deputy's words hung between us like they were carved from ice. "Financial Crimes found something they wanted you to hear." His eyes darted to me, then to the supervisor, then briefly toward the patrol car where Michael stood in the half-shadow of the light bar arms, crossed in front, now not behind, not arrested yet, but not free. The supervisor nodded once. "Let's go inside." He said, "I want everyone who needs to hear this to hear it." My legs felt 10 years older than they had this morning, but I walked with them anyway through the door, through the foyer, Linda picked from a catalog years ago, into the same living room where I first saw my daughter on her knees. Emily sat on the edge of the sofa, now arms wrapped around her middle, as if holding herself together from the outside. Linda stood near the far wall, one hand resting on a side table, mascara smudged under her eyes. My lawyer remained at the coffee table, the documents still spread out in neat rows. The supervisor motioned the younger deputy forward. "Go ahead," he said. The deputy took a small breath, glancing at his clipboard, though it looked more like a prop for his memory than something he needed. We pulled records going back 5 years. He began starting with the accounts linked to Mrs. Hayes and any subsequent transfers. The salon downtown, Hayes and Hands, closed early. My heart dipped when I heard the name. I imagined the soft yellow walls, the chairs she had saved for months to buy the mirror where I watched Emily learn to braid hair, like it was a prayer. That property was sold 4 years ago. He continued the bill of sale lists, your daughter Mrs. Hayes, and he nodded toward me as the legal seller. A large sum, the check verifies the signatures as hers. I nodded once. This part somehow did not surprise me anymore. I sensed something missing in her voice, even in those short hidden calls back then. "Where did it go?" I asked. "The money." He looked down at his notes. "That is where it gets interesting," he said. The funds were deposited into a joint account opened by Michael and Linda Wells. Every head in the room turned toward Linda, her lips parted. I was helping her manage things. She cut in quickly. She did not know how to handle that kind of money. She asked me. 3 days after the deposit, the deputy continued without raising his voice. A large chunk of that money was transferred to an account labeled Medical Reserve. The memo lines mentioned cancer treatment. The word hit me like a slap I had not seen coming. I heard it again this time in Emily's voice, the way she sounded on the phone, soft and shaken. "Linda is sick. It is serious. They are saying cancer." My fingernails dug into my palm. "We called the hospital listed in the memo," the deputy continued. "Their system has no record of Linda Wells ever being admitted, consulted, or treated for cancer. No oncology visits, no imaging, nothing corresponding to dates or amounts." The room tilted slightly. The deputy's words continued. "We also checked local nursing clinics and specialists. Same result. There is no paper trail that corresponds to where that money was supposed to go. For a moment, no one spoke. The lie sat there, exposed, ugly and raw. Linda's face went pale, then flushed, red again. Not all sicknesses look the same. She stammered, desperate to find the version of this story that made her look less monstrous. I was sick, she insisted. I had symptoms. The doctor said it could be cancer. We were preparing. With no follow-up, my lawyer asked quietly. No records, no treatment. She did not answer. The supervisor took a slow breath and let it out. The silence that followed felt different from all the others that day. This was the silence of a latch clicking shut. He turned toward the door where Michael had been brought inside just in time to hear his mother caught in the lie. The shock sat on his face. But for the first time, some of it looked like he wasn't watching us. Between the physical evidence, the testimonies, the false statements, the fraudulent use of medical claims to obtain funds, and the coercive control over this property. The supervisor said his voice level, but heavier now. We have more than suspicion. He nodded once to his deputies, placed them under arrest. They moved quickly once the words left his mouth. Place them under arrest. One of the deputies stepped behind Michael, another to his side. The sound of handcuffs coming off a belt is distinctive, but that day it sounded like the closing of a chapter, the scrape of metal against leather, then click it, locked around his wrists. He struggled. Once. Instinctively. But there was nowhere to go. You cannot be serious, he yelled. For what? For taking care of what her daughter abandoned. The supervisor did not blink. You are being placed under arrest for suspicion of domestic battery fraud and financial exploitation, he said evenly. You will have a chance to speak with a lawyer. For now, you need to stop talking and start walking. They read him his rights, turning him toward the front door. I watched his shoulders, the same shoulders that had sprawled across my couch, like the world owed him comfort, now tight with tension, as he passed Emily. He snapped his head, eyes burning into her. You did this, he hissed. You and your guilty mother. She flinched like the words were a raised hand. I stepped between them before the sound of him could land. No, I said calmly. You did this when you forgot she was a person and not your property. Linda lurched forward, reaching for Michael's arm as they guided him past. You cannot take my son like a criminal, she wailed. He is a good man. We are family. This is a misunderstanding. The supervisor turned to her. His eyes were tired but clear. Ma'am, he said, based on what we have found so far, you are also being detained for questioning regarding fraud and complicity in financial exploitation. You will need to come with us. She froze. For the first time all day, she seemed to realize the trap she helped close around my daughter's life had strings that led to her own ankles when the second pair of handcuffs clicked around her wrists. She did not fight. She just kept repeating, I was sick, I was sick, to no one who believed her. They took them both out the front door. The sun was dipping low, bathing everything in a soft gold. That did not match the hardness of what was happening. Neighbors had started to gather on the sidewalk, drawn by the patrol cars and the uniforms. Curtains twitched open. Phones appeared in hands. A man across the street crossed his arms, wearing an unreadable expression. A woman 2 houses down clutched a grocery bag to her chest, eyes wide. If you are listening to me, and if you have ever seen someone who believed they were untouchable walk past their own neighbors in cuffs, just leave a little heart in the comments, so I know you understand that strange mix of justice and sadness. Michael tried to square his shoulders, as if he could still pose while walking in chains. But the handcuffs changed everything. He could not swing his arms. He could not point. He could not grab. He could only walk. Every step marked by the soft rattle of metal. Linda kept her head down, hair falling forward, robe no longer regal in the evening light. The deputies guided them into separate vehicles, heavy doors opening and closing with final thuds. Emily stood just behind me in the foyer, one hand pressed against the doorframe. I could feel her trembling across the space between us as the engine started and the cars pulled away. Her breath hitched, then stopped. "Are they really going?" she whispered. It was as if she did not trust her own eyes. Actually gone. For now, I told her. I did not sugarcoat it. They will have hearings, lawyers. They will try to twist things. Her hand flew to her mouth. "What if they come back?" she asked, voice shaking. "What if they get out and they are angry? What if they find some way to take it all again? I do not have the shop anymore. I do not have." She cut herself off, a sob escaping. I turned to face her fully. In the quiet house behind us, the silence was finally starting to settle. "Listen to me," I said softly. "That is the last time you will ask that question while standing on someone else's deed." She looked up at me, confusion mixing with fear. I reached into my bag and pulled out the contingency file, the one that had started as a what if in a quiet law office years ago. The cardboard was warm from being held for so long. I placed it carefully in her hands. She looked down at it like it might burn her. "What is this?" she whispered. "Insurance," I said. "Not the kind they sell on the phone. The kind a mother writes when she knows she cannot be in two places at once." I tapped the file gently. "Your name is on those pages just like mine. Every signature, every clause, every protection we built into this house is in your hands right now." Her fingers curled around the file. She looked up, eyes shining with something new that had not been there hours ago, something like the beginning of belief. "But what if it is not enough?" she asked. "What if they find another way?" I leaned closer, close enough to see my own reflection in her pupils, older and tireder than I remembered, but still standing. "Baby," I said, my voice steady, "this house has always been yours. They just thought you were alone." It was almost dark when we finally stood in front of that door. The master bedroom had been at the end of the hall since the day this house was built, but to Emily it looked like a country she did not have a passport for. Her bare feet hesitated on the threshold where the hardwood met the bedroom carpet, as if crossing it might wake a monster. The deputies were gone. The cars had dispersed. The house was quiet in a way I had never heard before. No TV blaring, no orders barking, no heavy footsteps making anyone shrink. Just the soft hum of the air conditioner and our breathing. Her knuckles were white around the contingency file pressed to her chest. "Are you sure I can go in?" she asked. It broke my heart that she needed to ask permission to enter a room with her own name on the deed. I leaned against the opposite wall, not touching her, just close enough so she felt I was there. "You do not need my permission," I said. "But yes, I am sure. Open it." She touched the knob like it might burn her, then turned it. It turned smooth under her hand. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, then something like grief that it had always been this easy and still felt so impossible. She pushed the door open. The room smelled like stale cologne and a perfume I did not recognize, something sharp and floral. The bedspread was different from the one I had chosen years ago. Linda's taste stamped over mine, but the bones of the room were the same. Large windows, high ceilings, the headboard I paid for in cash. Emily stepped inside like she was walking into a photograph she had seen of herself but could not remember posing for. Her gaze moved over the walls, up to the skylight, down to the nightstands. Then it fell on the far side of the room where a stack of plastic bins and trash bags sat against the wall, half hidden behind a rack of clothes. "Those were not there before," she murmured. I nodded, joining her. My stride slow but steady. "The cops had them clear out the room access," I told her. "They said their things were stuck up there above the old Christmas decor. I asked them to bag it up." I watched her absorb the fact that someone had decided her life belonged in a crawl space. She walked toward the bags like she was afraid they would disappear if she moved too fast. One of them had her name scrawled on it in handwriting that was not hers. Another was labeled. Old stuff like her memories were clutter. She knelt and peeled back the tape on the nearest one. Inside her old high school clothes folded in on themselves, a sequined prom dress, and nestled on top of it was a small box. I recognized it before she opened it. The set of custom golf clubs I had given her the morning she graduated was engraved with her initials. "I thought I lost these," she whispered. She lifted one up and ran her finger over the letters. "KH," she said. "We used to play on the green." She put the club down slowly and reached deeper. She pulled out a stack of journals, their covers bent at the corners. She opened one at random, her eyes moving quickly over the page. Then she looked up. Her mouth trembled. "This was the last thing I wrote before he took the journals away," she said. I was scared, but I still sounded like me. She turned the book toward me. On the page, in a quick, loopy handwriting that did not shake, she had written about plans for the salon ideas for a community braiding class, a note to call me on Saturday. I felt something fracture inside my ribs. If you are still with me and you have seen someone you love find a version of themselves trapped on a page, leave a heart in the comments, so I know I am not the only mother who has witnessed that kind of resurrection. Emily pressed the journal to her chest, then looked from the bag to the room. Here a pair of shoes she used to wear to the shop. Michael said made almost no money. There a photo of her graduation, her smile, wide eyes bright, the tip of my shoulder visible next to her. Linda and Michael kept the house, but they hid her up here like the version of her with hope was bad for business. They took everything that reminded me I had a life before them. She said quietly, "Not just things, plans, even my name. He started calling me girl when he was angry. He called me that girl when he spoke to neighbors like I was not in the room." She stood slowly looking around the master bedroom again. I forgot what it felt like to have a door. One I could close where no one was allowed unless I said so. And so I walked to the bed and sat on the edge, patting the space beside me. "Do you remember now I said that this room does not belong to his voice or hers? It belongs to the woman whose name is on every real piece of paper connected to this house." She joined me, shoulders shaking the file still in one hand. I took it gently, placed it on the nightstand. "You will not be sleeping in that closet again. I told her if you wake up in the middle of the night reaching for a mop, you come in here until your body understands the war is over." Her throat worked around a sound that turned into a sob. Finally, she broke down and fell into my arms. I do not know how to live without listening for his footsteps. She admitted I do not know how to rest in a room without wondering what I will pay for it later. I put my hand over hers, the same one that had signed too low under someone else's threats, and squeezed. "You do not have to know tonight. I told her you just have to know you can figure it out." She turned her head to look at me. For the first time since I stepped back into Georgia, I saw a glint of the girl who used to dance in the living room after closing singing off-key while she braided hair, messy, wounded, thinner, but still there. "Mom." Her voice cracked, but the word was clear. "I want to live again." "Tell me how." I wiped a tear from her cheek with my thumb, then folded her fingers around the edge of the blanket and tucked her into the bed that was hers. "Start tonight," I whispered. "You are home."